Hello friends, and welcome to Escaping the Mouse with your host, me, Breck Roll. Alright, I got a little bit of a DIY project today. I know sometimes you guys like that, so we got one today. I'm not really going to call this a that's not how it's done moment because I'm not really blaming the maintenance staff for this. I'm blaming the people that they had paint the apartment complex. As you recall, I mentioned a few weeks ago they were painting the entirety of the complex, and they took about 3 or 4 weeks to do the whole place. And in the process of doing it, they were just kind of careless about masking things. And I noticed that the porch lamp outside my front door had been just kind of covered with the paint that they painted onto the building itself, and it just looks horrible. So I was going to take a little time today and fix that. So I've pulled it off the wall right now, and I've got it on the floor in here, and I'll show you what we're dealing with. So this is the porch lamp right here. As you can see, it's supposed to be black, but since they didn't mask it, it's all speckled. It's all black and white now. It looks horrible. And you can actually see down here, they just got a whole bunch of paint on that thing. And the glass is all kind of dirty and yucky and all that. So, you know what? This is a real simple little thing to do. It'll take a few minutes to take it apart, clean it up, and let's repaint this. We can make this thing look a lot better. And fortunately, this is kind of a free project because it's only the labor to do it, because I got everything I need to do it in already. So let's go. So the first thing I have to do is take it apart. And basically there's two screws, one here and one here, that holds the bottom and the top together. So let's remove those two screws. Now, upon closer examination, I've discovered that there's actually a nut at the bottom of each one of these screws. So I'm just going to grab it underneath with my finger and unscrew it and remove the two halves. And there's a similar one on this side. This is designed to be relatively easy, so you can take the top off and replace a bulb really easily without having to chew up your fingers. So, and I'm also going to remove the bulb because we don't need that in there. Looks like we've had a couple of hornets' nests in here too, so we'll clean that all out while we're in here. And this thing looks pretty gross inside. It's been a long time. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slide these glass pieces out because they need to be cleaned too. Especially that one. Look at that. That's gross. So the first thing now, I got these two metal pieces. First thing I got to do now is just clean them up really well. Get them all nice and clean so that they look good. So let's go do that. I'm just going to do that in the sink. That's easy. So the first thing I'm going to do is just give the whole thing a nice rinse off. And I'm going to use a sponge with a Brillo pad on it just to kind of clean everything up. I'm just kind of cleaning all the surfaces inside and out. We want to get all the dirt off because eventually we're going to put new paint on it. We want the paint to stick. And if it's all covered with dirt, that's just not going to work. And I'm going to do the same with this. Now, we have electronics in here, and so a lot of people might think, okay, you got to be really careful with that. But fortunately, this is not active electronics. There's nothing right now because it's disconnected, and it's going to be thoroughly dried before we put any electricity on it. So I don't really mind getting this wet because I know it'll be dry before we're done with it. But we are going to get those wasp nests out of there. They don't belong there. Yeah, you can see what side they got the paint on, man. It's all on that side. It's actually not too bad on that side. It looks pretty dark on that, but notice the difference? That shouldn't be spotted like that. That would look good match with the counter though, right? Almost the same color palette. And while we're here, let's clean these glass panels too. They're actually plastic, not glass. And now I'm just going to kind of go at each of them with a towel here, get everything nice and dry. It's not so important right now for the glass because we're not going to be using that for a little while. But you want to get the metal pieces dry because unfortunately the paint won't stick to any better to the water than it will to bird poo. As you can see, it's still got a little bit of the whatever that is on there, and that's not coming off real well. So like I said, we'll just put that in the back. That won't be a problem. Nobody will see that. This is where we're going to get the bulk of the water out of here so that over the next 24 hours while the paint is drying, that it will dry out thoroughly. I am actually going to get my towel inside the socket there because I do want to get that as dry as I can, because that's where the electricity is going to be. Alright, so those are both ready to go now. They look pretty dry inside. I'm going to let them sit a little bit because I got to kind of make up an area where I can paint these without getting paint all over the place. So I just improvised this little painting booth out of an old cardboard box I have around. I've moved recently, so I have an enormous number of cardboard boxes, and this one chose to sacrifice itself for a higher calling. So this is going to be our little paint box, which keeps me from getting paint all over the house. So here are the two pieces that we're going to paint, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use some flat black Rust-Oleum paint. This is a real good stuff. It covers really well, and it turns into like a rust-proof coating. It'll be a flat color, so it won't be like glow in the dark or real glossy. It'll be a nice flat finish. It'll look really nice on this. Now, one of the downsides of this Rust-Oleum paint is it's kind of a thick material, and if it's been sitting for a long time, all the thickness and all the dense material settles to the bottom. So you really got to shake these things really good to get everything mixed up, or else you won't get any good paint coming out of there. It's starting a little easier because I already did a little bit of this when I pulled a can out of the closet, but I think we're pretty much ready to go here. So the real secret to spray paint is that you don't just point it in one place and leave it there. Whenever you're spraying, you need to make sure the can is moving so that you get a nice thin, even coating. Otherwise, it'll tend to drip and it'll look horrible. So, and I'm going to go down all the sides. I'm going to stick my finger in there a little bit so I can rotate this thing around. And one more time. Gonna get a little paint on my fingers, it happens. And I'm not really so concerned about the inside surfaces because you're not gonna be able to see those anyway unless you actually got inside the lamp. Then I'm just gonna do the same thing over here. Once again, anytime the paint is moving or anytime the paint is spraying, I'm making sure that I'm moving the can as well, just so I get a nice smooth coating with no drips and none of that stuff. That looks horrible. Just want to make sure you get every surface here. It's okay if you get a little bit inside. Try and keep the paint out of the socket itself, because it will interfere with the conductivity. Doesn't matter if you get a little bit on the wire because I'm going to repaint, I'm going to recut the wire anyway. So I think that's good for now. We're going to let that dry for a while because that'll take a good 8 to 12 hours, maybe even longer because of how humid it is here for this to dry. So I'm just going to leave this over here overnight and we'll pick up with it again tomorrow. It's the next morning now, and I'll admit that about 9 o'clock last night, this was dry enough to the touch where I could kind of handle it and manipulate it and flip it upside down, and saw a couple places I missed that needed a second coat. So I gave that a second coat, and now that second coat is in really good shape. And this thing looks nice now. Looks brand new. Right? Ready to be reassembled here. So let's put this thing back together. Now we got our 4 pieces of glass that we're going to reinstall in here. Like I said, I couldn't really do a whole lot with that one. And I didn't really want to use any harsh chemicals to clean that off because unfortunately the chemicals that would be likely to dissolve that will also dissolve this plastic. So I just made a decision. That one's just going to go in the back so nobody can see it. The rest of them look pretty good. They got a little bit of splatter on them, but nothing really serious. And I think we can hide those. So what we've got under here is there's a little bit of just a little bump there that the glass hides behind. But in order to secure it at the top, you got to put some double stick tape on there. So I've got some of that right now, and we're just going to install that on right now. So I discovered you almost can't tell it, but these pieces aren't exactly perfectly square. This dimension is a little bit less than this dimension, so this is the bottom. And you got a kind of a rough side and a smooth side. So we want to have the rough side on the outside. So that's the one that looks decent. So what I'm going to do is just pop that in there and push it up against the double stick tape. Then I'm going to do the same with the rest of them. Now this is the one that's all dirty, so I want this one in the back. So that one's going to go here and stuck onto the tape. And then just do the same with the rest of them. This was kind of the worst of the remaining 4. Had a little bit of white on there, so I'm going to put that on the side that faces away from the door, just so it isn't seen. Up against the tape, and then this one. Get it into the slot, push it up against the tape, and we're pretty much ready to go. Get all my fingerprints on there, get a little greasy on the side of it. Now, as part of the painting procedure last night, I decided to paint the 2 screws that attach the base to the lamp. And you want to be real careful doing that because you want to get it on the head of the screw but not on the threads. And a trick that I learned a long time ago is you just poke a hole in the side of a cardboard box, stick the screw all the way in there, paint over the cover, and just paint over the screws and onto the cardboard behind it. And then once you've done painting it, just go in behind it and kind of screw it out a little bit so it sticks a little bit away from the cardboard and it doesn't get stuck to the cardboard. This way, you got the head of it painted, but nothing on the threads, which is what you want to do. So since that happened last night and they've dried overnight also, I'm just going to remove those and we'll use those. So there's one of the screws right there, and you can see the point. I didn't get any paint on the threads itself, but the head is perfectly covered, so we're ready to go on that. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to replace the bulb in here, just because it's easier to get the bulb in here before the lantern's attached. And then this just goes right here, like so. Kind of get the threads of the holes all lined up here. Like I said, there's a little nut at the bottom here, so I get the nut into position. around to the other side. Gotta get everything to line up properly here. There we go. Screwed in good and tight. Now I got the first one in, let's make sure the second one's in nice and tight. And there we go. That is actually a respectable looking lamp now. It's going to probably look better than all the rest of them. I can live with that, right? So a lot of people would have just, if they came across a porch light that was as bad off as this one was, they would have just simply replaced it and gone out and bought another one. But for about $3 worth of paint and maybe $1 worth of double stick tape, that's as good as new. Probably better than it was. So let's go reinstall that thing. So since I have plenty of slack on the wire here, and these old connections here are kind of messed up, I'm just going to replace those. We'll just cut all that off and we'll restrip it and do it right. Not that it wasn't done right, but generally when you connect and disconnect wire nuts like that, the wire tends to get a little bit frayed and in nasty shape. So it's easier just to do it right and do it the second time and redo it and get it the way it should be. So now I got some nice clean wires to strap onto, and let's go out and hook this thing up. Yep, much better. So it was kind of ironic when I was hanging that thing up out there, one of the maintenance guys walked by and asked me, "Oh, what happened? Did it fall down?" And I said, "No, I just when they repainted the building, they just did a really sloppy job of masking this thing up, and I just decided to take it down, take it apart, and clean it up." And even he had to acknowledge it looked pretty good. So he also had to acknowledge that they didn't do the nicest job in the world painting here. So I'm glad that at least they can recognize that. Anyway, that is all I have for today's vlog, so I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you as always for watching, and I will see you next time on Escaping the Mouse. Good night.